I'm Joshua, 37, and my brother used a jagged landscaping rock to smash the $15,000 Honda Civic I had just bought for my 16-year-old daughter. He stood there, laughing, thinking his money and his status as the family's golden child made him untouchable. Before I tell you about the moment my father walked out of the garage with a 10-pound sledgehammer and delivered a verdict that shook the ground beneath our feet, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I read every single one of them. You need to understand something about the car. To a lot of people, a 2018 Honda Civic is just a commuter vehicle. It's practical. It's reliable. It's boring. But to my daughter, Bella, that car was freedom. It was the culmination of 2 years of straight A's, babysitting gigs that went late into the night, and weekends spent mowing lawns while her friends were at the mall. We made a deal when she turned 14. I told her if she saved half the money, I would match the other half. I wanted her to understand the value of a dollar, especially in this economy where inflation seems to eat your paycheck before you even get it. I'm a landscape architect. I don't make a fortune, but I make an honest living designing spaces where people can find a little peace. My wife, Sarah, works in administration. We are careful with our money. We have a modest college fund for Bella, we pay our mortgage, and we don't carry credit card debt. That $15,000 we scraped together for that silver Civic wasn't pocket change. It was sacrifice. It represented overtime hours I picked up during the scorching summer months and lunches Sarah skipped to save $20 here and there. We bought the car 2 months before Christmas. I'll never forget the look on Bella's face when I handed her the keys. She didn't scream or jump around. She just cried. She ran her hand over the silver paint like it was made of diamond. She named it Silver. Unoriginal, maybe, but to her it was perfect. She washed that car every Sunday. She bought special wipes for the dashboard. She parked it in the furthest spot at the grocery store so nobody would ding the doors with a shopping cart. That car was her baby. And it was the vehicle that was leading our small convoy to my parents' house in Stockton for Christmas Eve. I was driving our SUV with Sarah in the passenger seat. Bella was following us in Silver. I kept checking the rearview mirror, watching her maintain a perfect 3-car length distance. She was a careful driver, cautious, respectful of the road. I felt a swell of pride in my chest that nearly made it hard to breathe. I was raising a good kid. In a world that seems to be producing more and more entitled brats, I had raised a daughter who said please and thank you and understood that you have to work for what you want. She's doing great, Josh, Sarah said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. She knew I was nervous, not about Bella's driving, but about where we were going. I know, I said, my eyes flicking back to the mirror. I just want this holiday to go smoothly. I don't want any drama this year. Sarah sighed, looking out the window at the passing dry fields of California winter. It's Christmas. Maybe Caleb has matured. Maybe he'll actually be pleasant. I snorted. Caleb? Matured? The guy thinks the world revolves around his wallet. I just hope he doesn't start talking about his investments, or asking me why I haven't bought a bigger house yet. My brother Caleb is 2 years younger than me. He's 35, owns a chain of electronics repair stores, and if you asked him, he'd tell you he's the next Elon Musk. He's the kind of guy who wears sunglasses indoors and talks loudly on his phone in restaurants. Growing up, he was the golden child. If I broke a plate, I was clumsy. If Caleb broke a plate, the plate was slippery. If I got a B on a test, I wasn't applying myself. If Caleb got a C, the teacher was unfair. It's an old wound, I know. I'm a grown man. I should be over it. But family dynamics have a way of dragging you right back to being 10 years old. And lately, Caleb had been unbearable. He had just gone through a messy patch with his business partners. Something about a lawsuit. But apparently, he had come out on top because he had been bragging in the family group chat for weeks about his big upgrade. Just promise me you won't take the bait, Sarah said, her voice firm. No matter what he says, do it for Bella. Do it for your mom. I promise, I said. I'll be the bigger man. I always am. I meant it. I really did. I wanted peace. I wanted to eat my mom's roast turkey, drink a beer with my dad, and watch my daughter open her presents. I had no idea that in less than 5 hours, I would be holding my brother by the collar, ready to smash his face in, while my daughter screamed in terror. We pulled off the highway and navigated the suburban streets of Stockton. My parents live in a nice neighborhood. Older houses, big trees, wide driveways. It's the house I grew up in. As we turned onto their street, I saw it. You couldn't miss it. Parked right in the center of my parents' driveway, taking up enough space for 2 cars, was a brand new, jet black Porsche Panamera. It was gleaming under the late afternoon sun, looking like a shark in a goldfish pond. It screamed money. It screamed aggression. "Well," I said, feeling my stomach tighten. "He's here." I pulled our SUV up to the curb because there was no room in the driveway. Bella pulled Silver up behind me, parking perfectly parallel to the curb. She turned off the engine and stepped out, clutching a bag of gifts. She was smiling. She had a bright, innocent smile that lit up her whole face. She had no idea that the predator was already inside the house, and his offspring was watching from the window. I didn't know it then, but that Porsche wasn't just a car. It was a catalyst. It was the symbol of everything my brother valued over human connection. And before the night was over, that symbol would be tested against the raw, unyielding force of a father's justice. If I had known what was coming, I might have turned the car around right then and there. I might have driven us back to Sacramento and ordered Chinese food. But we don't get to see the future. We just walk blindly into the traps laid by the people who are supposed to love us. The moment we walked through the front door, the atmosphere hit me. It smelled like roasting herbs, garlic, and expensive cologne, Caleb's cologne. It was overpowering, masking the comforting scent of my mother's cooking. "There they are. The slowpokes." Caleb's voice boomed from the living room. He walked out holding a glass of red wine. He was wearing a designer sweater that probably cost more than my first car, and his hair was gelled back in that slick style he thought made him look like a Wall Street shark. His wife, Melissa, trailed behind him. Melissa is complicated. She's nice enough when Caleb isn't around, but in his orbit, she becomes a silent echo, nodding at everything he says. And then there was Jackson, my 13-year-old nephew. He was sitting on the couch, staring at his phone, barely looking up when we entered. He had bleached tips in his hair and a sneer that seemed permanently etched onto his face. "Hey, Caleb," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. I put down the gifts. Traffic was a bit heavy. "Traffic is for people who don't know the shortcuts," Caleb laughed, slapping me on the back a little too hard. "Or for people who drive slow cars." He winked at Bella. "Hey, sweetie, I saw that little tin can you parked out front. Cute. Very economical." I felt the first spike of irritation. "It's a Honda Civic, Caleb. It's a great car. Safe, reliable." Sure. Caleb waved his hand dismissively. "Great for a first car, I guess, if you like blending in." He turned to my dad, who was coming out of the kitchen wiping his hands on a rag. "Dad, did you see the Panamera? I told you I'd get one. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. That's German engineering for you. Cost me $100 grand. But hey, you get what you pay for, right?" My dad, David, is a man of few words. He's retired now, but he spent 40 years working as a mechanic and later managing a fleet of trucks. He knows cars. He knows engines. He respects machinery, not price tags. He looked at Caleb, then at me, then at Bella. "It's a fast car, son," Dad said quietly. He walked over and hugged Bella. "Good to see you, Peanut. You drove here." "Yes, Grandpa." Bella beamed. "It drives so smooth. I love it." "Good," Dad nodded. "You take care of your tools, they take care of you." Caleb rolled his eyes. He hated when Dad didn't fawn over his purchases. "Anyway," Caleb said, turning back to the room, "business has been insane. We just opened 2 new locations in Modesto. Revenue is up 40%. I'm thinking of taking the family to Cabo in February. You guys should come." "Oh wait, Josh probably can't get the time off, right? How's the gardening business?" "Landscape architecture." I corrected him through gritted teeth. "And business is fine. We're busy." "Gardening architecture, same dirt." Caleb laughed at his own joke. Jackson snickered from the couch. I looked at Sarah. She gave me a warning look. Don't do it. We moved into the living room. My mom, Martha, came in and hugged us all. She looked tired. Mom always tried to keep the peace, but having Caleb around was exhausting. He demanded constant attention. So, Caleb said, sitting down and spreading his arms across the back of the sofa, taking up as much space as possible. I heard you guys are still paying a mortgage on that place in Sacramento. Interest rates are killer right now. You should have refinanced when I told you to. We're comfortable, Caleb, I said, sitting next to Sarah. We like our house. Comfortable is code for stagnant, Caleb lectured. He swirled his wine. You know, if you need a loan to fix up that kitchen, I can hook you up. Family rates. We don't need a loan, I said, my voice dropping an octave. Just offering. Caleb held up his hands in mock surrender. Don't be so sensitive. God, you've always been so sensitive. Remember when we were kids and you cried because I broke that Lego castle? It was an accident, but you acted like I burned down Rome. I remembered. It wasn't an accident. He had stomped on it because I had built it taller than his. He had looked me right in the eye as he crushed the plastic bricks. And when I cried, Mom had said, he didn't mean it, Joshua. He's younger than you. Be the big brother. That was the theme of my life. Be the big brother. Absorb the damage. Fix the mess. Let Caleb shine. I remember, I said. I also remember you didn't help clean it up. Ancient history, Caleb dismissed. He turned to Jackson. Jax, get off the phone. Go say hi to your cousin. Jackson stood up slowly, sliding his phone into his pocket. He was wearing expensive sneakers that were untied, a fashion statement, I assumed. He walked over to Bella, who was sitting by the Christmas tree. Sup? Jackson grunted. Hi, Jackson, Bella said politely. How's school? Boring, Jackson said. He looked out the window. That your car? Yeah, Bella smiled. Silver. Silver. Jackson scoffed. That's a dumb name. It's gray. It's silver, Bella corrected him gently. Whatever, Jackson said. Dad let me steer the Porsche on the highway. It was sick. We hit like 90. That's illegal, Bella said, frowning. You're 13. So? I know how to drive, Jackson bragged. He looked at Bella with a challenging stare. Bet I could drive your car better than you. I don't think so, Bella said, turning away to talk to Mom. I watched Jackson. He didn't move away. He stood there, staring at Bella, then staring out the window at the cars. There was something in his eyes that unsettled me. It wasn't just boredom. It was calculation. He looked like a kid who had never been told no in his entire life. And knowing Caleb, he probably hadn't. So Josh, Caleb's voice pulled me back. I was thinking about the inheritance. Mom and Dad's house. Sitting on a nice plot. When the time comes, knock on wood, we should bulldoze it. Build a duplex. Rent it out. Passive income. Baby. I froze. Mom and Dad were sitting right there. Caleb, Mom gasped. We aren't dead yet. I'm just planning ahead, Mom. Caleb laughed. It's smart financial planning. Josh wouldn't understand. He thinks with his heart, not his wallet. But real estate is where the money is. This place is a goldmine waiting to be tapped. This is our home, Dad said, his voice low and gravelly. It's not an asset. It's a home. Everything is an asset, Dad, Caleb said, shaking his head like he was talking to a child. You just have to know how to leverage it. Just like that Porsche. It's not just a car, it's a statement. It gets me meetings, closes deals. Perception is reality. I felt a headache forming behind my eyes. It was going to be a long night. I looked at Bella. She was showing Mom pictures on her phone, probably of her friends or her cat. She looked happy. I told myself to focus on that. Focus on the good stuff. Ignore the toxicity sitting on the couch wearing $1,000 sweater. But the shadow of the past was long. It stretched from our childhood right into this living room. The resentment I felt wasn't just about money. It was about respect. It was about the fact that Caleb could insult our parents' home to their faces and call it financial planning. And nobody would stop him. Well, almost nobody. I saw Dad's jaw tighten. I saw the way his hand gripped his beer bottle. Dad was getting older, but he wasn't blind. He saw what Caleb had become. And for the first time in years, I wondered if the dynamic was shifting. I wondered if the golden child shine was finally starting to tarnish in the eyes of the old man. I took a sip of my drink. I needed to stay calm. For Bella. "Dinner is almost ready," Mom announced, breaking the tension. "Caleb, honey, can you help me get the salad?" "Relax, Mom. I'm a guest," Caleb said, leaning back. "Let Josh do it. He's good at domestic stuff." I stood up without a word and went to the kitchen. I could hear Caleb laughing in the other room. "See? He loves to help. Good old Josh." I gripped the edge of the granite counter until my knuckles turned white. Just get through the night, I told myself. Just get through the night. But the night was just beginning. And the storm that was brewing outside wasn't made of rain or wind. It was made of envy, entitlement, and a landscaping rock that was lying in the front garden, waiting to be picked up. The dinner table was set beautifully. Mom always went all out for Christmas Eve. Roasted turkey, mashed potatoes with her secret gravy recipe, green bean casserole, and freshly baked rolls. It was the kind of meal that should bring people together. But the air around the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. We were squeezed in tight. I sat next to Sarah, with Uncle Harold and Aunt Linda across from us. Uncle Harold is a successful real estate agent, the only person in the family Caleb actually tried to impress. Aunt Linda is, well, she loves drama. She thrives on it. Caleb sat at the head of the table, Dad's usual spot, but Dad had just shrugged and taken the side seat. "Let the boy feel big," he had whispered to me earlier, but it bothered me. It was a power move, plain and simple. "So, Harold," Caleb started, ignoring the food Mom had just placed in front of him. "Market is crazy, right? I'm thinking of flipping a property in the Bay Area. Got some liquidity I need to move." Uncle Harold chewed his turkey slowly. "Market is cooling, Caleb. Interest rates are up. Might not be the best time to leverage too hard." "Cash is king, Harold," Caleb smirked. "I don't need banks. My liquidity is solid." I knew for a fact that Caleb had taken out a second mortgage on his house last year. Mom had told me in confidence. But here he was acting like he was Warren Buffett. "How about you, Joshua?" Aunt Linda asked, her eyes darting between me and Caleb. "Any big promotions coming up? Or are you still at the same level?" "I'm a senior partner, Linda," I said, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. "I have been for 3 years. We just landed a contract for a city park renovation. It's a big project." "A park?" Caleb chuckled. "Cute. Swings and slides. Sustainable landscapes," I corrected. "Water conservation systems. It's actually very complex engineering." Right, Caleb waved his fork. "Saving the planet. Very noble. Doesn't pay the bills like tech though, does it?" "It pays my bills just fine," I said, staring him down. "Speaking of bills," Caleb turned to Bella. "Hey kiddo," Uncle Caleb was thinking. "That little car of yours has got a lot of miles, right? You going to be able to afford the repairs when it breaks down? Because Hondas are great until the transmission drops." "It's in perfect condition," Bella defended her car. "My dad checked everything, and I have a job. I save my money." "A job?" Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Doing what?" "Flipping burgers." "Tutoring," Bella said proudly. "Math and science." "Good for you," Caleb said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Pocket money. Hey Jackson, maybe you should hire your cousin. Your grades have been slipping." Jackson, who had been pushing his mashed potatoes around his plate like they were poison, looked up. "I don't need a tutor. Teachers just hate me." "Exactly," Caleb nodded. "The system is rigged against smart kids who don't fit the mold. Jackson is a visionary, like me. School bores him." I saw Dad roll his eyes. He poured himself another glass of water. Then, the conversation shifted to the topic I had been dreading. The college fund. "So, Josh," Caleb said loudly, "have you started saving for Bella's college? Or are you expecting her to take out loans? Because let me tell you, debt is a chain. I'd never let Jackson go into debt. His fund is fully loaded. Ivy League ready." "We have a fund," Sarah interjected, her voice sharp. "Bella will be fine. Just asking." Caleb held up his hands. "I know things are tight for you guys. If you need help structuring a trust." "We are fine, Caleb," I snapped. "Drop it." The table went silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. "Whoa!" Caleb laughed nervously. "Touchy. Just trying to help the family." "God, you're so defensive." Jackson suddenly stood up. "I'm done. Can I go outside?" "Sit down, Jackson," Melissa whispered. "We haven't had dessert." "I don't want pie," Jackson whined. "I want to go look at the cars." Caleb beamed. "See? He loves cars. Chip off the old block. Go ahead, son. Take the keys to the Porsche if you want to sit in it and listen to the stereo. Just don't start the engine." Caleb tossed his heavy key fob to Jackson. Jackson caught it with one hand, a smirk playing on his lips. He looked at Bella. "Hey, Bella," Jackson said. "Give me your keys." "What?" Bella looked confused. "Why?" "I want to compare the interiors," Jackson said. "See how bad the Honda is compared to the Porsche." "No," Bella said firmly. "Nobody sits in my car without me." "Don't be a brat," Jackson sneered. "Just give me the keys. I want to see if the stereo works." "I said no, Jackson." Bella turned back to her food. "Dad," Jackson whined. "Bella is being a jerk. She won't let me see her car." Caleb sighed dramatically. "Bella, honey, come on. It's Christmas. Let your cousin see the car. It's not like it's a Ferrari. What's he going to do? Get it dirty?" "I don't want him in my car," Bella said, her voice shaking slightly but holding firm. "He's eating chocolate. He'll get it on the seats." "I'll buy you new seats." Caleb laughed. "God, you people treat these cheap things like they are holy relics. Give him the keys, Bella. Don't be selfish." "No," I said. My voice was loud enough to rattle the glasses. She said, "No, Caleb. That's the end of it." Caleb glared at me. "You're raising her to be stingy, Josh. That's ugly. Family shares." "Sharing is voluntary," Sarah added. "This is her property." She said no. Jackson threw his napkin on the floor. "Fine. Your car sucks anyway. It's a piece of junk." He stormed out the front door, slamming it behind him. "Great." Caleb threw his hands up. Now he's upset. "Are you happy, Josh? You ruined his mood." "He's a spoiled brat, Caleb," I said, unable to hold it back anymore. "Excuse me?" Melissa spoke up for the first time, looking offended. "Jackson is high-spirited. He's rude," I said, "and he needs to learn the word no." "You know what?" Caleb stood up. "I need a smoke. I can't deal with this negative energy." Caleb walked out the front door after his son. The table was silent again. Aunt Linda was pretending to be fascinated by her green beans. Uncle Harold was checking his watch. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said quietly. "I tried." "It's okay, honey." Mom reached over and patted my hand. "Eat your turkey." "I'm proud of you, Bella," Dad said suddenly. He was looking at his granddaughter with intense respect. "You stood your ground. A driver protects their vehicle. You did right." Bella smiled weakly. "Thanks, Grandpa." For the next 10 minutes, we tried to salvage the dinner. We talked about the weather, about the neighbors, about anything except the two people outside. I assumed Caleb was out there smoking a cigarette and Jackson was probably sulking in the Porsche playing on his phone. I was wrong. We were just serving the apple pie when it happened. A scream. It wasn't a playful scream. It wasn't a scream of surprise. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated heartbreak and terror. "No! Stop! Dad! Make him stop!" It was Bella's voice. She must have seen something through the front window. I dropped my fork. The sound of it hitting the china plate was the last normal sound I heard that night. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I jumped up, knocking my chair over. Sarah was right behind me. Dad was already moving, surprisingly fast for a man of 70. We all ran to the front door. I threw it open and stumbled out onto the porch. The scene before me was etched into my brain in a split second. It was a tableau of violence under the festive Christmas lights. Jackson was standing on the hood of the Honda Civic. He was jumping on it. And Caleb? Caleb was standing by the passenger door. He wasn't stopping him. He was laughing. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the rock in Jackson's hand. Jackson! I roared. The sound tore from my throat, raw and primal. At the sound of my voice, Jackson turned. He didn't look scared. He looked excited. His eyes were wide, manic. He raised the jagged landscaping rock, a heavy piece of gray slate he must have pulled from Mom's flower bed, and slammed it down onto the windshield. Crack. The sound was sickening. It was the sound of safety shattering. The safety glass spiderwebbed instantly, a white scar spreading across the dark tint. No! Bella screamed, running past me. My car! Get off! Smash it! Caleb yelled, his voice slurring slightly. He was drunker than I realized. Show her it's just junk, Jax. It breaks easy. Jackson laughed and brought the rock down again. This time, the windshield caved in. I didn't think. I just moved. I sprinted across the lawn, my dress shoes slipping on the damp grass. I reached the car and grabbed Jackson by the back of his designer hoodie. I yanked him off the hood. He tumbled onto the grass, landing with a thud. Hey! Caleb lunged at me. Don't touch my son. I spun around, adrenaline flooding my veins. I wanted to hit him. God, I wanted to hit him so bad. My fist was clenched so tight my fingernails were digging into my palm. Are you insane? I screamed, inches from Caleb's face. He just smashed her car. It's a prank. Caleb shoved me back. It's just a prank, Josh. Relax. It's a piece of plastic junk. We'll buy her a new windshield. Stop acting like he killed someone. Bella was sobbing. She was standing by the car, her hands covering her mouth. She was looking at the caved-in glass, the dented hood where Jackson's boots had stomped the metal in. The passenger side mirror was hanging by a wire. Caleb must have kicked it. The headlights were smashed. Look at her, Sarah yelled, holding Bella. Look what you did. You traumatized her. She's being dramatic, Caleb spat. He looked at Jackson, who was standing up, brushing grass off his pants. You okay, bud? He pushed me, Jackson whined, pointing at me. Uncle Josh assaulted me. I should have done worse, I growled, stepping forward. Uncle Harold and Dad stepped between us. Dad's face was unreadable. It was like stone. Enough, Dad said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise like a razor blade. Call the police, Sarah said, pulling out her phone. Her hands were shaking. I'm calling 911. This is destruction of property. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Caleb held up his hands, his face flushing red. No police. Are you crazy? We're family. You don't call the cops on family. You didn't act like family when you let your son destroy my daughter's car, I said. It's a misunderstand, Caleb stammered. Jackson was just venting. He has ADHD. He gets impulsive. We can settle this. I'll write you a check. How much is that heap worth? $2,000? I'll give you 3. Keep the change. It cost $15,000. Bella choked out through her tears. And it's not a heap. 15. Caleb laughed incredulously. For a Civic? Josh, you got ripped off. Look, I'll give you 5,000. That's generous. Buy her a scooter. She doesn't need to drive anyway. I looked at the car. The silver paint was scratched deep on the door. Someone had keyed it. Probably Jackson while Caleb was distracting us. This wasn't an impulse. This was a targeted attack. They hated that Bella had something she loved. They hated that she said no. I don't want your money, I said. I want you to admit what you did. I want Jackson to apologize. And I want full replacement value. Right now. Or what? Caleb stepped closer, puffing out his chest. You gonna hit me, big brother? Go ahead. I'll sue you for assault. I have better lawyers than you. I'll ruin you. Sarah, I said, not taking my eyes off Caleb. Call them. Sarah, don't, Dad said. We all froze. I turned to look at my father. Dad, I asked, my voice trembling with betrayal. You're defending him? After what he just did? I said, don't call the police, Dad repeated. He walked over to the Honda. He ran his hand over the shattered glass. He looked at the dented hood. He touched the hanging mirror. Dad, please, Caleb said, his voice changing instantly to a wheedling tone. Tell them to calm down. It's just a car. Jackson made a mistake. Josh is overreacting. Family should forgive each other, right? Why calculate every little detail? Dad turned to look at Caleb. Family should forgive each other? Yes. Caleb nodded eagerly. Exactly. We're blood. You don't drag the law into blood matters. I'll pay for the glass. We call it even. Jackson, say sorry to your cousin. Jackson mumbled something that sounded like, sorry you have a bad car. See, Caleb spread his hands. Apology accepted. Let's go inside, have some pie, and forget this happened. I felt a cold pit in my stomach. Dad was going to let him off. Again. Just like the Lego castle. Just like everything else. Caleb was going to write a check for a fraction of the damage, smirk at me, and walk away. Bella would learn that money buys your way out of decency. Sarah, I whispered. Call. Wait. Mom spoke up. She was standing on the porch. She was holding her iPad. David, Mom said, her voice surprisingly steady. Check the camera. Caleb's face went white. Camera? What camera? You said the security camera was broken. Last time I was here, you said the Wi-Fi chip was fried. It was, Mom said, walking down the steps. I had it fixed last week. The technician came on Tuesday. Why didn't you tell me? Caleb demanded, panic creeping into his voice. Why should I? Mom raised an eyebrow. Unless you were planning to do something you didn't want us to see? Dad took the iPad from Mom. He tapped the screen. We all gathered around. Even Caleb tried to peek, but Dad angled the screen so only he could see it first. Then he turned it around for us. The video was clear. It showed Jackson walking around the car, keying the door. It showed Caleb walking out, smoking a cigarette. It showed Jackson asking his dad something, pointing at the rock. It showed Caleb nodding, laughing, handing Jackson the rock. Smash it. Caleb's voice was clear on the audio recording. Teach her a lesson. The silence in the yard was absolute. The evidence wasn't just of a bratty kid. It was of a father instructing his son to commit vandalism. It's taken out of context, Caleb stammered. I was joking. I didn't think he'd actually do it. You handed him the rock, Caleb? I said, my voice cold. Dad handed the iPad back to Mom. He looked at Caleb. He looked at the terrified Jackson. Then he looked at his Porsche Panamera parked 10 feet away. Family should forgive each other. Dad repeated Caleb's words again. Is that your stance, son? Yes, Dad. Caleb nodded frantically. Yes, we forgive. We move on. And we shouldn't calculate the cost? Dad asked. We shouldn't let money ruin relationships? Exactly, Caleb exhaled, thinking he had one. Exactly, Dad. You get it. Okay, Dad said. I agree. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Dad. Quiet, Joshua, Dad said. Dad turned and walked toward the garage. Where are you going? Aunt Linda asked. To get a tool, Dad said over his shoulder. To fix this. Caleb smirked at me. See? Dad knows what's important. He's gonna get some tape or something. We'll patch it up. I looked at Sarah. She was crying silently, hugging Bella. I felt utterly defeated. My father, my hero, had just sided with the bully. But then the garage door opened, and Dad didn't come out with tape. The sound of heavy boots on the pavement was the first thing we heard. Thud, thud, thud. Dad walked out of the shadows of the garage. In his right hand, dragging slightly due to the weight, was his old sledgehammer. The handle was worn smooth hickory. The head was 10 pounds of scarred, blackened iron. It was the hammer he used to break concrete. It was a tool of destruction. He walked past me. He walked past Bella. He walked right past Caleb, who was still wearing that smug, victorious smile. Dad stopped directly in front of the Porsche Panamera. "Dad!" Caleb's smile faltered. "What are you doing?" "That's the Porsche." Dad adjusted his grip on the handle. He spat on his palms. He looked at the sleek, black hood of the car that cost more than my parents' annual pension. "You said family shouldn't let property come between us," Dad said calmly. "You said we shouldn't calculate the cost." "Yeah, but—" Caleb took a step forward. "That's a $100,000 car, Dad. Put the hammer down." "Joshua," Dad said without looking at me. "Hold your brother." I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask why. I stepped forward and grabbed Caleb by the arms. Uncle Harold, sensing the shift in the wind, grabbed Caleb's other arm. "Hey, get off me." Caleb struggled. "Dad, don't you dare." Dad raised the hammer. He didn't swing it wild. He swung it with the precision of a man who had worked with metal his whole life. He brought it down right on the center of the Porsche's hood. Boom! The sound was incredible. It was louder than a gunshot. It was the sound of German steel buckling under American iron. The hood crumpled inward, forming a deep, jagged crater. The alarm started blaring. A high-pitched, rhythmic shrieking that matched the scream coming from Caleb's throat. "No! My car! Are you crazy?" Dad didn't stop. He walked around to the driver's side headlight. Crash. Glass and plastic exploded onto the driveway. He walked to the windshield. Smash. The safety glass of the Porsche was stronger than the Honda's, but it was no match for a 10-pound sledgehammer swung by a furious father. The windshield caved in a massive spiderweb of destruction. "Stop him!" Caleb screamed, thrashing in my grip. "He's lost his mind." "Mom, stop him." Mom stood on the porch holding the iPad. She didn't say a word. She just watched. Jackson was screaming now, too. "Grandpa, stop. That's our car." Dad ignored them all. He moved methodically. He wasn't in a frenzy. He was working. He took out the side mirror. Crunch. He caved in the driver's side door. Thud. He smashed the rear window. Crash. Every blow felt like justice. Every impact reverberated through my bones. I watched the symbol of my brother's arrogance, the metal shell he used to shield himself from the world, being systematically dismantled. Took about 3 minutes. By the time Dad lowered the hammer, the Porsche looked like it had been through a trash compactor. It was totaled. The roof was caved in. The dashboard was smashed. The leather seats were covered in glass. The alarm finally died, leaving a ringing silence in the yard. Dad was breathing heavy. He leaned on the hammer handle. He turned to look at Caleb. Caleb had stopped struggling. He was limp in our grip, staring at the wreckage with wide, tear-filled eyes. His face was pale as a sheet. "You," Caleb whispered. "You destroyed it. You destroyed my Porsche." "It's just a car, son," Dad said, mimicking Caleb's earlier tone perfectly. "Why are you getting so emotional? It's just metal. It cost a fortune." Caleb shrieked, his voice cracking. "I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you for everything you have. You old lunatic." Dad walked over to Caleb. He stood inches from his face. Dad wasn't a tall man, but in that moment he looked like a giant. "You want to sue me?" Dad asked softly. "Go ahead. But remember your rule. Family forgives, right? Or does that rule only apply when you are the one holding the rock?" Caleb sputtered. "This is different. This is insane." "No," Dad said firmly. "This is a lesson. You thought you could buy your way out of raising a decent son. You thought you could bully your niece because her car was cheap. You thought you were untouchable because of your bank account." Dad pointed at the wrecked Honda. "You smashed her freedom, so I smashed your status. Now we are even." "Even," Caleb yelled. My car is worth 10 times hers. You owe me $80,000. I don't owe you a dime, Dad said. Because I didn't smash your car. Caleb looked at him, confused. What? We all saw you. Everyone saw you. Dad turned to the group. He looked at Uncle Harold. He looked at Aunt Linda. He looked at the neighbors who had gathered by the fence. Did anyone see me smash this car? Dad asked loudly. The question hung in the air. Caleb looked around wildly. Harold, you saw him. You were holding me. Tell him. Uncle Harold cleared his throat. He looked at the wrecked Porsche, then at Caleb's red, tear-streaked face. Then he looked at Dad, standing there with the hammer, chest heaving, protecting his granddaughter. Uncle Harold released Caleb's arm. He stepped back. I didn't see anything, Uncle Harold said flatly. I was watching the stars. Beautiful night. What? Caleb gasped. Linda. Aunt Linda. Aunt Linda, the gossip, the drama queen, looked at Caleb with a sneer. She had seen how Jackson treated Bella. She had seen Caleb's arrogance all night. I think you must have hit a deer on the way here, Caleb, Aunt Linda said, checking her nails. Or maybe Jackson did it. He seems to like smashing cars. You're all lying, Caleb screamed. Melissa, tell them. Melissa was trembling. She looked at her husband, the man who bullied her, who ignored her, who treated her like an accessory. She looked at Jackson, who was crying over a car instead of apologizing for his actions. Melissa started. Mom, I said gently. What about the camera? Caleb's head snapped toward Mom. The camera, the video, it recorded everything. You can't lie your way out of this, Dad. The video will prove you did it. Mom looked down at the iPad in her hands. She tapped the screen a few times. Oh dear, Mom said, her voice dripping with fake concern. It seems the system just crashed. Deleted the last hour of footage. Must be that faulty Wi-Fi chip again. No, Caleb howled. He lunged for the iPad, but I stepped in front of him. Don't touch her, I warned. Caleb stood alone in the center of the driveway. His family, his safety net, the people he thought he could manipulate forever, had formed a wall against him. He looked at the neighbors. Mrs. Higgins next door just crossed her arms and turned away. He was isolated. For the first time in his life, his money couldn't buy him an ally. You people are sick, Caleb whispered. You're a cult. I'm leaving. I'm calling the police from the car. From which car? Dad asked. You can't drive that. Caleb looked at the Porsche. The windshield was gone. The roof was crushed. It was undrivable. I'll call an Uber, Caleb spat. And then I'm calling my lawyer. You'll hear from him tomorrow, David. I'm taking the house. I'm taking your pension. I'm taking everything. You can try, Dad said, leaning the hammer against the garage wall. But if you do, I might just find that video of you instructing Jackson to smash Bella's car. I think I have a backup on the cloud. And I think your customers might be interested to see how the family man owner of their local repair shop treats a 16-year-old girl. Caleb froze. His business relied on his reputation. Modesto was a small enough town. A video like that going viral? It would destroy him. That's blackmail, Caleb hissed. That's leverage, Dad corrected. Isn't that your favorite word? Caleb stared at Dad for a long, agonizing minute. The hatred in his eyes was palpable. But underneath the hatred, there was fear. He knew he had lost. He knew he had pushed too far, and the old man had pushed back harder. Come on, Jackson, Caleb said, his voice shaking. Melissa, we're leaving. I can't find my phone, Jackson sniffled. Leave it, Caleb yelled. Get in the Uber when it comes. They stood on the curb for 10 minutes waiting for the ride. Nobody spoke to them. We went back inside the house, but the party was over. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a deep, aching sadness. I watched through the window as the Uber pulled up. Caleb got in without looking back. Jackson followed. Melissa hesitated, looking at the house, looking at us in the window. For a second, I thought she might come back in. but she lowered her head and got into the car. As the taillights faded into the distance, leaving the wrecked Porsche sitting like a tombstone in the driveway, Dad sat down on the sofa. He looked 10 years older than he had an hour ago. He put his face in his hands. "I failed him," Dad whispered. "I raised him to be that way. I let him get away with too much for too long." I sat next to him. "You didn't fail him, Dad. He made his choices." "I protected Bella," Dad said, looking up at me, his eyes wet. "That's what matters. A man protects his pack." "You did," I said. "You really did." The morning of Christmas Day arrived with a silence so profound it felt heavy. Usually, Christmas morning in my parents' house was a chaotic symphony of wrapping paper ripping, Christmas jazz playing too loud on the stereo, and Caleb's voice dominating every conversation. He would usually be complaining about the coffee, or bragging about the gifts he bought for Melissa, or critiquing whatever gift I had gotten for Mom. But this year, there was only the sound of the wind rattling the dry leaves of the oak tree outside. I woke up on the pull-out sofa in the den, my back stiff. For a second, I forgot. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the turkey leftovers and the game we were supposed to watch. Then, the image of the sledgehammer crashing into the windshield flashed in my mind, and the reality of the previous night rushed back like a tidal wave. I got up and walked to the window. I pulled back the curtain. It was still there, the carcass of the Porsche Panamera. In the harsh, gray light of the morning, it looked even worse than it had under the garage floodlights. It looked like a crushed beetle. The roof was caved in so deep it touched the headrests. The glass littered the driveway like diamonds from a failed heist. It was a violent, ugly scar on the manicured suburban lawn. I went into the kitchen. Mom was there making coffee. She looked like she hadn't slept a wink. Her eyes were puffy, and her hands trembled slightly as she poured the water. "Merry Christmas, Mom," I said softly. She looked at me and offered a weak, watery smile. "Merry Christmas, Joshua." We didn't hug. We just stood there, the aroma of brewing coffee mixing with the stale scent of yesterday's trauma. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "He's in the garage," Mom said, looking out the kitchen window toward the wreck. "He's been out there since 5. He's waiting for the tow truck." "On Christmas morning?" "He paid extra," Mom said. She took a sip of her coffee, staring into the black liquid. "He said he didn't want that thing sitting there when Bella woke up. He said he didn't want her to look at it and remember the fear. He wants it gone." I nodded. It was just like Dad. He couldn't fix the emotional damage with a wrench, so he was trying to fix the environment. He was scrubbing the crime scene. I poured myself a cup and went out to the garage. Dad was sitting on his workbench stool, polishing the sledgehammer. It was a surreal sight. He was wiping the head of the hammer with an oily rag, cleaning off the bits of German safety glass and paint that had stuck to the iron. "Morning, Dad," I said. He didn't look up. "Morning. You okay?" He stopped wiping. He looked at the hammer, then set it down gently on the bench next to his wrench set. "I'm fine. Just cleaning my tools. Never put a dirty tool away. Bad luck." "Dad," I leaned against the doorframe. "About last night." "We aren't talking about it." Dad cut me off. His voice was firm, but there was a crack in it. "It's done. I handled it." "I know you did," I said. "I just... Thank you. For Bella. You have no idea what that meant to her. To me." Dad sighed. A long, rattling exhale that seemed to deflate his entire posture. "I didn't do it for thanks, Josh. I did it because I was tired. I was tired of watching him walk all over you. I was tired of watching him treat us like stepping stones. And I was tired of lying to myself that he was going to change." He looked up at me then, and I saw the grief in his eyes. It wasn't anger anymore. It was the crushing weight of a father realizing he had lost a son. Not to death, but to character. "I kept thinking," Dad whispered, "that if I just loved him enough, if I just gave him enough chances, the good kid inside him would come back. The kid who used to help me wash the truck. The kid who used to catch frogs in the creek. But that kid is gone, Josh. Money ate him. Envy ate him." Before I could respond, a massive flatbed tow truck rumbled down the street. It was bright yellow and loud, breaking the suburban quiet. It backed up into the driveway, the air brakes hissing. The driver, a burly guy in a Santa hat, hopped out. He looked at the Porsche, then he looked at Dad. He whistled low and long. "Merry Christmas," the driver said, scratching his beard. "Dispatch said you had a wreck, but, damn, did a tree fall on it?" "Something like that," Dad said, walking out to meet him. "Just get it out of here. Take it to the scrapyard. Or the impound. I don't care. Just get it off my concrete." "I need the keys to put it in neutral," the driver said. "Keys are gone," Dad lied smoothly. "Just drag it." I watched as they hooked the chains to the undercarriage of the $100,000 machine. The sound of metal screeching against pavement as they dragged it up the ramp was excruciating, but strangely satisfying. It was the sound of consequences. As the truck drove away, carrying the twisted metal corpse of Caleb's ego, Dad stood at the end of the driveway, hands in his pockets, watching it disappear around the corner. He turned to me. "Now we have breakfast. Then we have business." "Business?" I asked. "Bella needs a car," Dad said. "And I promised her one." "Dad, you don't have to do that today," I said. "Everything is closed, and you don't have to spend 20 grand. That's your retirement money." "I have savings," Dad said, walking past me back into the house. "And what is retirement for if not to spoil my granddaughter? Besides, I saved a lot of money last night." "How?" I asked, confused. "I was going to rewrite my will next week," Dad said over his shoulder. "I was going to leave the house to Caleb and the cash to you because he always complained he needed the asset. Now, I don't need a lawyer. I just need a checkbook." We went inside. Bella was up. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen. She looked small. The trauma of the night before had taken away some of her spark. "Grandpa?" she asked when Dad walked in. "Is it gone?" "It's gone, Peanut," Dad said, kissing the top of her head. "And look," he pulled out his phone. He opened an app. "I found a dealership in Sacramento that's open today for a special holiday sale," Dad said. "I called the owner. He's an old buddy of mine from the trucking days. He's holding a car for us." "Grandpa, you don't have to," Bella started. "Get dressed," Dad ordered gently. "We leave in an hour. Josh, you drive." The drive to the dealership was quiet. Bella sat in the back, staring out the window. I knew she was mourning Silver. It sounds silly to grieve a machine, but that car was her independence. It was her hard work, and seeing it violated had shaken her trust in the world. When we pulled into the dealership lot, the owner, a man named Big Mike, was waiting for us. "David," Big Mike boomed, shaking Dad's hand. "Sorry to hear about the trouble, but I got just the thing." He led us to the back of the lot, and there it was. It wasn't a 2018 Civic. It was a 2022 Honda Civic Sport, dark blue, almost black. It had alloy wheels, tinted windows, and a sunroof. It looked sleek, modern, and tough. "It's got lane assist, backup cameras, blind spot monitoring," Big Mike said, patting the roof. "And I threw in the extended warranty because I like your grandpa." Bella stood there, her mouth slightly open. This is for me?" "Open the door," Dad said. Bella walked forward tentatively. She opened the driver's door. The smell of the new car interior wafted out. Leather and clean plastic. She sat in the seat. She gripped the steering wheel. I saw her shoulders relax. I saw the ghost of a smile return to her face. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's yours," Dad said. "It's safe. And it's better than the one that was taken. Because that's how life works, Bella. Sometimes things get broken. Sometimes people break them on purpose. But we don't let them win. We build back better. We upgrade." Bella jumped out of the car and threw her arms around Dad's neck. She buried her face in his shoulder and sobbed. But this time, they were tears of relief. "Thank you, Grandpa. Thank you." "You're welcome," Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. "Now let's go home." Grandma is making cinnamon rolls. While Dad was signing the paperwork in the office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Caleb. You think you won? I just got off the phone with my lawyer. You're all going down. Dad is going to jail for destruction of property. And I'm suing you for assault for touching Jackson. Happy Christmas, loser. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keypad. I wanted to reply. I wanted to tell him he was delusional. I wanted to tell him about the video. But then I looked through the glass partition of the office. I saw Dad laughing with Big Mike. I saw Bella sitting in her new car, adjusting the mirrors, looking like a teenager again instead of a victim. I deleted the text. I blocked the number. I wasn't going to let his poison into this day. We drove back to Stockton in a convoy again. Me in the SUV, Bella following in her new blue Civic. I checked the rearview mirror. She was keeping perfect distance. She was safe. When we got back to the house, the mood had shifted. The shadow of the Porsche was gone. The air felt lighter. But the real test came later that afternoon. The phone in the kitchen rang. It was the landline, the number Caleb had memorized since childhood. Mom froze while drying a plate. She looked at the phone like it was a bomb. It's him, she whispered. I know it's him. Let it ring, Dad said from the living room. I can't, Mom said. He's my son. She picked up the receiver. Hello. I stood in the doorway listening. I could hear Caleb's voice screaming on the other end. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was pure vitriol. It was the sound of a narcissist who had lost control. Mom listened for a long time. Her face was pale, but her posture straightened. She gripped the counter. No, Caleb, she said firmly. Silence on the other end. I said no, Mom repeated louder this time. You are not the victim here. You destroyed a 16-year-old girl's car because of your ego, and you tried to blame it on a child. More screaming from the other end. I don't care about your lawsuit, Mom said. And David wasn't bluffing. We have the video, and if I see so much as a letter from a lawyer, I will post it on every community board in Modesto. I will send it to your business partners. I will send it to the Chamber of Commerce. She paused, listening to his sputtering response. You're right, Mom said, her voice breaking slightly. You don't have a mother anymore, because the son I raised wouldn't do this. Don't call here again until you are ready to be a human being. She hung up the phone. She placed it gently back on the cradle. Then she turned to the sink and started scrubbing a pan that was already clean. She scrubbed harder and harder, her shoulders shaking. Dad walked in. He didn't say anything. He just wrapped his arms around her from behind. Mom turned into his chest and wept. It was a mourning cry, the sound of a mother grieving the living. I took Sarah and Bella into the living room to give them privacy. That night we ate leftovers. We watched a movie. We laughed a little, but it was a different kind of laughter. It was the laughter of survivors. We had cut off the gangrenous limb to save the body. It hurt. God, it hurt. But we were alive. And for the first time in years, the house felt truly safe. There was no walking on eggshells. There was no waiting for the insult. There was no fear. As I lay in bed that night, Sarah whispered to me, "Do you think he'll really stay away?" "I think he has to," I said. "He's terrified of the truth coming out. For Caleb, image is everything." Dad held a mirror up to him, and he couldn't stand the reflection. "I'm proud of your dad," Sarah said. "Me too," I said. "I just hope." "Hope what?" "I hope Jackson has a chance," I said. "But I think it's too late for him." I was right. It was too late. But we wouldn't find that out for another 2 years. 2 years later, the California sun was shining on the new pergola I had built in my backyard in Sacramento. I was sitting under the shade of the wisteria vines, sipping iced tea. My laptop was open. I was reviewing the designs for the City Park project. We had finished Phase 1, and the City Council was thrilled. Life was good. Not perfect, but good. Bella was 18 now. She had graduated high school with honors and was packing to leave for UC Davis in the fall. She still drove the blue Civic. She kept it immaculate. Every time she came home, she parked it carefully, checked the locks, and gave the hood a little pat. She never talked about the silver car, but I knew she hadn't forgotten. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. Coming up this weekend. Dad made his famous chili. Want us to bring some? I smiled and typed back. Bring gallons. Bella loves it. My relationship with my parents had transformed. Without the constant drain of Caleb's drama, they had blossomed. Dad seemed younger. He smiled more. He had taken up fishing again. Mom had joined a book club. They were happier. But there was a hole. A Caleb-shaped hole in the family that we all stepped around carefully. We heard things, of course. Aunt Linda was our reluctant spy. She couldn't help herself. She would call Mom under the guise of checking in and drop little nuggets of information about the disaster that was Caleb's life. About 6 months after the Sledgehammer Christmas, Caleb's business started to crumble. It wasn't because of the video, we never released it. We kept our word. It was because arrogance is a poor business strategy. He had over-leveraged himself with the new locations. He had treated his staff like garbage, and they walked out en masse. Then the IRS came knocking. Apparently, Caleb's financial planning involved some creative accounting that the government frowned upon. He lost the Porsche, not to a sledgehammer but to the repo man. Then he lost the house. Then he lost Melissa. According to Aunt Linda, Melissa finally found her spine. Maybe seeing Caleb humiliated that night planted a seed. Maybe she realized she didn't want to be the wife of a failure who blamed everyone but himself. She filed for divorce a year ago. She took Jackson and moved back to her parents' place in Arizona. And Jackson? That was the part that hurt the most. Mom told me the story a few months ago. She was at the grocery store in Stockton. She was in the cereal aisle. She turned the corner and saw a tall, lanky teenager with bleached hair wearing a hoodie. It was Jackson. He was visiting a friend in town, apparently. Mom said her heart leaped. It was her grandson. Despite everything, the instinct to love was still there. She walked up to him. "Jackson?" she had said. "Honey, is that you?" He had looked at her. His eyes were cold, dead. There was no recognition, no warmth. Just the same sneer he had inherited from his father. "Do I know you?" he had asked. "It's Grandma," Mom had said, reaching out a hand. "It's Grandma Martha." Jackson had laughed. A cruel, sharp sound. "I don't have a grandma. My dad told me you're all dead to us. You're just some old lady." He had turned his back on her and walked away, stealing a candy bar from the shelf as he left. Mom had stood there in the cereal aisle and cried. When she told me, she didn't sound angry. She sounded resigned. "He's gone, Josh," she had said. "Caleb poisoned the well. There's no water left to drink." I thought about that as I sat in my garden. I thought about the toxicity of bloodlines. We are told that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that you stick together no matter what. But that's a lie. Sometimes blood is just biology. Sometimes family is the people who respect you, who protect you, who build you up instead of tearing you down. Caleb and Jackson were blood, but they weren't family. Not anymore. Dad was family. Dad, who picked up a hammer to defend a 16-year-old girl. Mom was family. Mom, who chose truth over the comfort of denial. Sarah and Bella were family. I closed my laptop. Bella walked out onto the patio. She was holding an acceptance letter from the university housing. "Dad," she grinned. "I got the dorm I wanted. The one near the arboretum." "That's awesome, honey," I said. She sat down next to me. "I'm going to miss you guys. And Grandpa and Grandma. We're only an hour away," I said. "And you have a reliable car. You can come home whenever you want." "I know," she said. She looked at me seriously. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything. Do you ever miss Uncle Caleb?" The question hung in the air, drifting on the scent of the wisteria. "I miss the brother I thought I had when I was 5, I said honestly. "I miss the potential of who he could have been. But I don't miss the person he became. And I don't miss the way he made us feel." Bella nodded. "I don't miss him either. Is that bad?" "No," I said. "That's healthy. It means you know your worth. You know that you don't have to tolerate abuse just because it comes from a relative. She smiled, satisfied with the answer. Grandpa is coming this weekend, right? Yup. With chili. Good, Bella said. I need him to show me how to check the oil in the Civic again. I want to make sure I know how to do it perfectly before I leave. He'll love that, I said. Later that evening, as the sun set, turning the sky a brilliant shade of purple and orange, I stood by the window looking out at the street. I saw a neighbor walking his dog. I saw kids riding bikes. It was peaceful. I realized then that the sledgehammer hadn't just destroyed a car. It had broken a cycle of enabling, of excuse-making, of prioritizing the loud and the bully over the quiet and the good. Dad had swung that hammer not out of rage, but out of love. A fierce, protective love that drew a line in the sand and said, "No more." And because he did, we were free. We were a smaller family now. We had one less chair at the Christmas table. We had fewer presents under the tree. But the air in the room was clean. The laughter was real. And the love was unconditional, not transactional. I poured myself a glass of wine. A cheap bottle, not $100 vintage, but it tasted sweet. I raised the glass to the empty street. To the sledgehammer, I whispered, and to the peace it brought. Looking back on that night, and the 2 years of silence that followed, I've realized that the hardest thing in the world isn't fighting your enemies. It's fighting the people you are supposed to love. We often hold onto toxic family members because we are terrified of the guilt. We are afraid of being the bad guy who broke up the family. But what I learned from my father is that keeping the peace at the expense of your dignity is a price too high to pay. Here are the truths I want you to take away from my story. No is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your property or your peace. Enablement is not love. Shielding someone from the consequences of their actions doesn't help them. It destroys them. My parents loved Caleb enough to finally let him fall. Family is action, not DNA. Being a father, a brother, or a son is a title you earn every day through respect and kindness. If someone repeatedly hurts you, their title doesn't grant them immunity. Justice requires courage. Sometimes you have to be the one to pick up the sledgehammer and smash the status quo. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut off a family member to save your own sanity? Was it the hardest thing you ever did, or the best? If you made it this far, you are the kind of person who understands the value of respect. Do me a favor, type good in the comments if you agree that my dad did the right thing. It lets me know that there are still people out there who believe in accountability. And share your story below. Let's support each other in building families defined by love, not obligation.